Hello, this is Christy Carter with Global Positive News Network, and I have the honor and the privilege of introducing to you Rishi Sharma. He is the founder of Heroes of the Second World War. What Rishi has done, he's gone all over our country interviewing World War II veterans. It's so important. It resonates deeply with me because I've had some family members who are also in the war. Rishi's mission says, our mission is to film interviews with the remaining World War II combat veterans to strengthen relationships between these veterans and their communities, and to create a living memorial to pass these veterans' wisdom on to future generations. So welcome, Rishi. Thank you so much for being here on Global Positive News Network.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I can't wait to hear more about what you're doing. It's just fantastic. So Rishi, kind of give us a little background about what was the impetus for you to get this started in the first place?
Sure. I've always been interested in the Second World War ever since I was a little kid. All I ever wanted to be was a Marine. But when I thought of a Marine, I thought of an 18-year-old with nothing but the shirt on his back and a rifle in his hand.
Oh boy.
Fighting in the jungles of Guadalcanal or the sands of Iwo Jima. And so as I got older, I realized, the world is not as black and white as it once was. And, not all the wars are good versus evil like World War II was. And so I didn't have as much of an interest in joining the military, but I never lost my interest in the veterans and what the veterans have given us. And so I just started reading as many books about World War II as I could find. And then I would watch movies and television shows. And eventually I was reading a book in high school that was a memoir, it was really an anthology of different veteran recollections. And I just was so amazed by one of the veterans, what he had done at 21 years old, him leading a platoon, holding off 500 Germans, that I decided I just have to talk to this man and tell him, thank you.
Yes.
And I looked him up and I found out that he was still alive, and I found his phone number on the internet and I just called, and it was just the coolest feeling to be able to talk to someone on the phone, a real life hero, and to be reading about them in a book, at the same time. And if I want to get in touch with some kind of silly celebrity like the Kardashians, I'd have to go through a million people, but to talk to someone who literally saved the world, I could just pick up the phone. And so that set me on a journey to try to, I called a few more veterans that way. And then I decided I wanted to meet these men in real life. And I started riding my bike to the local retirement home. And the director of it was so excited to see a young person there that he took me room to room to 25 different World War II veterans.
Wow.
And I set up interviews with them, and I begged my mom to get a camera, and I did. I just started to record it, and I just fell in love with it. Eventually, the local paper did a story, and people started contacting me about veterans, their dads, their grandparents, their neighbors, their friends, and it got to the point where I was scheduling appointments, and it was like a job, and I started ditching class to go do interviews because I was learning more from the veterans than I was in school.
There you go.
And eventually, after some more news coverage, I was very blessed to get a substantial amount of funding after CBS News did a national story. And ever since then, I hit the road. I was 18 or 19, and I hit the road. I haven't been home in 4 years. I've interviewed just over 1,100 World War II veterans in the U.S., 45 states in the U.S., Canada, the UK, and Australia and New Zealand. And I'm still doing it. And we meet the veterans, we film, interview them, we put it on DVDs, and we mail it to them. It's all for free. It's just so that they have their stories preserved properly. And it's just such a big honor. And I want to meet all the heroes.
Oh, bless your heart. That is so fabulous. And I love your passion. It comes right through. It's obvious you're so passionate about that. Wow.
Well, I feel like they literally have given me an opportunity at a free life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for what these men and women did. And You
Mhm.
know, it's not just me. I mean, it's millions and millions of people
That's
who
right.
get to wake up in a world where their homes aren't bombed out, or
Yeah,
they can go up to anyone and say whatever they want without any fear of repercussion. Or
that's
kids
right.
today get a dream about what it's like to be a grandparent, you know, instead of
Mhm.
worrying about whether they're going to get killed this time tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah.
we live such a blessed uh, and nice life because of the
Do.
very real sacrifices made
Mhm.
by men and women. But I mean, truly, these men were, you can't even call them men because the majority of them were boys. I mean, imagine being 19 years old and dying for your country. I mean,
I know.
that's tough.
I know. My nephew, he's going to be a sophomore at Oregon University. He's like, I can't imagine him fighting and leading a platoon at 19 years old, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, they grew up so fast, so quickly, and they saw death, they saw life, they saw so much of life in such a short period of time. It's
Yeah. I
really
mean,
incredible.
I like to say that the World War II veterans, every single day of their lives has been about helping those around them. Whether it was growing up in the Great Depression,
Mm-hmm.
when many of them quit school to to get a job to help put food on the table for the family,
Mm-hmm.
to lying about their age, or
Mm-hmm.
changing their birth certificate, or volunteering, or even if, you know, when they were drafted, they still did their duty. You know, when the war came after Pearl Harbor, and they fought in the worst war in the history of humanity, 70 million dead worldwide. And then they came home and they didn't want any media attention or
Mm-hmm.
parades. All they wanted was to raise a family and to get their old jobs back. And if you actually look at all the major civic organizations, whether it's Lion Clubs, 4-H, Rotary,
Mm-hmm.
all of them have their roots in World War II veterans coming home. Either
Mm-hmm.
it was created by the World War II veterans, or the population substantially got a lot larger
Mm-hmm.
because the veterans wanted to still contribute in some way. And so, I mean, I know veterans in their 90s and hundreds who still volunteer at hospitals. I mean,
That's awesome. Oh, man.
they're just a perfect example of what it means to have a true North Star on your moral compass.
Yes, and a purpose and a meaning to their life, because when you're helping other people like that, it just your life experience just expands. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. I
Wow.
mean, there's some people who, you know, they are born, they live their life, and they pass. And to put it frankly, you know, the world's no different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people just don't make that large of an impact on those around them. But you can't say
Mm-hmm.
that about a single World War II veteran,
Yeah.
because what they did during the war, what they did when they came home, they literally built the pillars of our society.
Yes.
And we would not be here if it was not for them. And we can't
Mm-hmm.
just discount them because they're older,
Mm-hmm.
because it was 75 years ago, which is really not even a long time in the history
Mm-hmm.
of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just down, you know, just it's quite recent. And so I just,
Mm-hmm.
it's very real what these men and women went through for our way of life.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I can't thank them. I don't have enough. I mean, I have so much gratitude towards them. I mean, what do you do with that? Jeez, we do live such a blessed life. And yeah, we have the COVID and we have fires here in Northern California and there's issues, but nothing like war.
Absolutely.
It's just incredible. And they have just saved us and they've paved the way for a beautiful life here. It's just incredible. Now, speaking of 75 years, it's 75-year anniversary is coming up on September 2nd.
That's
Is
right.
that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. The anniversary of World War II ending
Wow.
is on September 2nd.
Oh my gosh. And that's just next week. That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you know, with all these protests and everything, it's getting kind of out of the
Yeah.
spotlight, unfortunately. But it's a really big milestone because, I mean, 75 years. I mean, and it's almost like a movie when you look back at it. You know, I mean, literally, there was a regime trying to annihilate an entire race of people.
Right.
And, I mean, both of them really. I mean, the Japanese, what they did to Chinese was, horrible, and the
Yeah.
Germans did to the Jews, and
Right.
that's just the skim of it. You know, that's
Right.
not even. It's I just it's hard when I think about that little 5-year-old girl who knew nothing but the love of her mom and her father, and then one day was taken away from her home, put on a cattle car, in a train, and sent to some concentration camp, separated from her parents, her loved ones, and shoved into a so-called shower.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it just sucks because
Yeah.
no one's going to remember her life, because there's so many of them. 6 million is a large number, then 70 million for the whole war. I mean,
yeah.
And what's so beautiful about the United States and the other allied countries is that they were willing to send their young men to go overseas, fight in a land, for towns they couldn't pronounce, for islands they couldn't even point to on a map,
or even find on a map.
Yeah. And liberate those people.
Right.
And people who weren't their own, and they were willing to sacrifice their lives for them. And I mean that's a really, it's one thing to talk the talk, but I mean the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, India, I mean Poland, I mean they all walked the walk because there's 420,000 dead in America, for example. I mean, those were lives given to help protect other countries, and so that they could. And it's not like we wanted to subjugate them to an American way of life. They don't speak English in France. They speak French.
Right. Right. And pretty ironic, isn't it? It's amazing. Oh my goodness. Wow. So you started this about what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I'm 22 now. I just turned 22, and so I started it when I was a senior. No, excuse me. I started it when I was a junior in high school, but I hit the road right after I graduated.
So you did graduate. That's a good thing.
Yeah, barely. I mean,
so are you going to go into college, or if this is like your life's work, though? I mean, this is huge.
I have no plans ever to go to university. I mean, you have to understand that when I meet one of these, each time I meet one of these heroes, it's literally going back in time, because I can ask these veterans anything about the past 120 years, get a first-hand answer as a response.
Incredible.
And so I just am learning a lot doing that. I graduated high school, and because I was blessed enough to get that funding, this is just my job, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as there are World War II veterans out there to interview.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. What's the oldest one that you've ever interviewed?
110.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah. Yeah, the older and I interviewed, he was 110, and he actually smoked 5 cigars a day and drank 5 shots of whiskey. So
every day?
He couldn't even stop during our interview, which is only so. I mean, it's but I know a 105-year-old that still rides a bicycle 2 miles a day, a real bicycle. I mean,
that is so cool. I mean, I think because we are living longer. I mean, it's insurance companies are saying now they're writing insurance policies for like people living to 120 years old.
Yeah.
And that's more the millennial age, I guess. And I just love that. That's so inspiring. 105, 110-year-olds still going at it. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think we, too often in this country, we kind of talk down to the elderly, kind of treat them like they're incoherent 5-year-olds that can't tell their left from their right. But the reality is, I mean, these are the people who've accumulated the most amount of wisdom just due to the fact of how long they've been here. And so we really have to do something about preserving these stories. And, what I'm doing is not unique. Anyone with a smartphone, with a camera,
can preserve
these stories. And that's what's so special is that, anyone listening to this, you have the opportunity to go meet the World War II veteran, whether it's your grandpa, your neighbor, at the local retirement community, and you can be a part of preserving their history. But what I tell, on the website, there's a guide on how to do the interview and some of the questions that, what we ask, what we recommend you ask. And the veterans are always willing to give the interviews. I do tell people, imagine if a Civil War veteran suddenly came up. I have to say that one again.
Oh, you know what? I actually have that written down. I can say it if you like.
Oh, it's up to you. If you want to say it, you can say it.
So, Rishi, you have your tagline. It's kind of like your tagline. If the Civil War veteran suddenly came back to life from the grave, all the world's media would be hounding him, begging for an interview, using the nicest equipment and the fanciest cameras. That we have this opportunity now with the World War II veterans. We should not wait until there is only one left to acknowledge their sacrifices and to document them. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, I mean, if everyone just took the time to find a veteran
yeah,
and document a little bit, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, I mean,
right.
200 years from now, that's going to be priceless. You can't
You're
put
right.
a price on just because imagine what an interview with a Civil War veteran who fought at the Battle of Gettysburg. Imagine what that would be worth right now. I
Right.
mean,
I
because
love it.
we can't rely on secondhand information, especially when we have the technology, the
Yep.
means, and the transportation to actually do this.
You're absolutely right. You know what this keeps coming to mind is Clint Eastwood, because he has a propensity for World War vets, and I know that he did a movie about maybe 10 years ago, Iwo Jima.
Oh
The
yeah,
whole,
Iwo Jima, yeah.
yeah, and it was about, I think there was like a Japanese side and then the American side, and it was all about these guys who did so much and sacrificed so much for our country and for preservation of Japanese culture to a certain extent as well. But I could see you and Clint Eastwood putting together something like this. I
Well,
mean, he would love it. And
if you have any connections, I've tried very hard to try to reach out to some of these people, and I've got nowhere, to be honest. That's a really sad part about it. I mean, I'm very
wow,
blessed that I was able to get the funding, but even now, I don't even have the funding after 4 years of travel.
okay,
The funding's not very much, and so I've tried reaching out to Tom Hanks, Spielberg, and
yeah, it seems like those guys would be interested as well.
you would think.
Wow,
Believe me,
interesting.
yeah, and that's a really sad part about it. I mean,
Huh. Well, don't give up. It's not over yet. So just keep on going and keep sending those emails or what have you. And, I'll do what I can do too. I mean, I'm only about 2 hours from Carmel. So that's where Clint lives, I think, still. I'm not sure. But
oh
we'll see
well,
what we can do. I think
yeah,
it's worth it.
yeah, I
It'd be
appreciate
awesome.
it. Maybe you can run into him at the country club or something.
Yeah, there you go. Gosh. So, okay. So Rishi, overall, what is your whole goal to accomplish with your mission here?
My mission is to be able to meet and film interview all the World War II combat veterans of the Allied countries and to encourage other people to participate in a similar effort in their community, because this is not something I can do alone. This needs to be some kind of national conversation of what we can do as a
Mm-hmm.
people to preserve the stories of those who fought for our freedoms, our way of life, and for us to have a future,
Right.
and not just a future, but a safe and a positive one. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
able to preserve their accounts of what the reality of war is, what the reality of combat and the worst war
Right.
in the history of humanity is, so
Right.
that it never has to happen again. Because
Mm-hmm.
if school children watch these interviews and understand just how horrible war is, as
Mm-hmm.
they get older and become leaders in
Mm-hmm.
their communities and their state and the nation,
Mm-hmm.
they will be a lot less likely to gravitate towards policies that would send our young into harm's way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So what do you have coming in the near future?
I think dinner.
Dinner. Good. Okay. That's literal. I like that.
Yeah,
But
but no, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I don't understand why we have to live in a country where
Mhm.
people seem to care more about what the Kardashians are wearing
Oh
than what
my
the
God.
older man down the street
Right.
did for our freedom, and that just really upsets me. And so, I mean, I'm just going to keep doing these interviews. I'm going to hope people reach out and want to do them in their area.
That's so cool.
My goal is to create a TV series, some kind
Mhm.
of documentary series about these World War II veterans. And
Beautiful.
I mean, I've tried reaching out to production companies, but no luck yet. And so that's the goal. It's to create a documentary series so people know what it's like to meet these heroes. You know, it would be great if a camera crew was able to follow me,
Yeah.
see what it's like from a 22-year-old perspective to meet people 70, 80 years older than you, and for them, even though they're strangers, to treat you like like your good friends and their
Yeah.
family, and to invite you into their home. And
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, these are the most wonderful people, most
They
generous, most
are.
kind, most friendly,
Yep.
literally will take the shirt off their back to
Yep.
help you.
Yep.
And that's what we need in this country right now. We need to take notice of how these veterans have
Mhm.
acted and how they do continue to act.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because right now, with all the division and protest and anger
I
at one
know.
another, that's not what these veterans fought for. That's not
No.
the way of life that we're supposed to be living. We need to love one another. We need to be unified and
Mhm.
move towards a progressive future
Mhm.
that's inclusive and fair
Mhm.
for everyone.
Mhm.
And I just it 420,000 men were killed in World War II from the United States, and each one of them had a mom and a dad and
Yeah.
a pet dog named Spot and a girlfriend. And they cheated on some math test, and I mean they had a whole life ahead of them.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just a name on a grave. I mean
Right.
they had dreams and goals and ambitions that would never
Mhm.
be fulfilled, in the hope that just maybe we
Mhm.
could fulfill ours.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
I just think it's bad enough that they were killed in the war, but it's even worse if they died for no reason. We
Right.
have to make it so those 420,000 are
Right.
the 420,000 and not one more, because
Right.
one is enough, you know,
Mhm.
and we really need to take notice of the sacrifices made for our way of life,
Mhm.
and understand
Mhm.
uh, what we can do together to make it worth it, so that
Mhm.
19-year-old, even though we can't do anything for him now,
Mhm.
at least he could have died with the idea that he was doing something right and that he was helping people in the future. I mean, imagine all those mothers. I mean, it's
Oh,
not just
incredible.
420,000 dead. Anyone who's a mother, imagine what
Yeah.
it's like for one of your kids just to die and not to
Yeah.
know any of the circumstances. People
Yeah.
need to understand communication and technology is not what it was. It's not like what it is today. All you get is a telegram
Yeah.
saying your son was killed in action.
Yes. It's like a one sentence type thing. I've seen that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
whether
Oh
he was
my
blown up, shot, I mean,
God. Right.
all those different
Horrible.
possibilities, and you wouldn't want your worst enemy to have to go through that.
No.
So
No.
why would we do that to ourselves?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Do the veterans, do they feel valued? Do you feel like they feel valued by our society? Do they realize the impact that they've saved our world basically? Do we get that?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I've never really asked them in that way. I think the World War II veterans understood that there was serious evil
Mm-hmm.
at the time that they went
Mm-hmm.
to fight with the Empire of Japan and
Mm-hmm.
the regime of Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they understood that they had to get rid of the immediate threat, which they did.
Right.
But I don't if they've understood that the lasting peace, or for the majority of the time, the lasting peace that we've had,
Mm-hmm.
I think they feel they've definitely, because they have. I mean, they've contributed to it, but they also are not the type of people to pat themselves on the back,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right?
They're very
Almost,
humble.
yeah,
Yeah.
almost to the
Mm-hmm.
point that it's kind of like, if you didn't save us, who did?
Right.
I mean, they have to realize that they did save the world, but they also aren't the type to say, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
saved the world. And
Exactly.
it's just like those men who say, the veterans who say, I'm no hero.
Oh,
Well, you know what? A hero is not going to
they
call himself
are.
a hero anyway.
Yeah,
So, I mean, they are heroes.
they
And
are heroes.
I, I think people need to, the civilian population of our country needs to make a more uh, pronounced effort. The
Mm-hmm.
civilian population of our country needs to make a more pronounced effort to show our appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough just to go up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service, because that's
Mm-hmm.
equivalent to the grocery clerk saying, how are you today? I mean, unless
Mm-hmm.
you actually sit down and
Right.
learn about the sacrifices and what they went through, just
Right.
going up to someone and saying, thanks for your service.
Right.
I find it to be quite superficial, and
Right.
unless someone really takes the time to talk to that veteran and express
Mhm.
what they did. Uh,
Exactly. exactly. And, I want to urge our audience here at Global Positive News Network to go to your website, which is heroesofthesecondworldwar.org, so they can get involved. They can learn more about getting involved with World War II veterans and how to help them, how to be with them, how to be friends with them, how to interview them, and also donations. Those are fantastic as well, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, if anyone knows of any World War II combat veterans, please reach out at heroesofthesecondworldwar.org. We're always looking for veterans to preserve their stories.
That's so great. Oh my gosh. So Rishi, what positive news do you want to share with our viewers today?
I interviewed a veteran about a year ago who saw a lot of action, fought in Italy,
Wow.
fended off a lot of the Germans, and he had seen a lot, and he was wounded twice. I got word that I interviewed him when he was 103.
Oh my goodness.
And a week before, he lives on his own. I mean, this man he's built very strong, and he lives on his own, totally with it.
Wow.
A week before I interviewed him, he'd driven from Denver to South Dakota by himself to go to the casinos.
Bless his heart. I love that. Oh my God.
I got word that he turned 104. So that's
oh my goodness. That's positive news. That's fantastic. I love hearing about these guys who are they're centurions now, and they're driving places, and they're riding bikes, and they're they're inspiring people like us, and that's fantastic. We need more of them. We need to hear more about them, more from them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Rishi, how many more interviews are you going to be doing? How many more veterans are there out there?
I mean, I don't know on numbers, but I mean, I haven't been home in 4 years. I mean, at this point, this is my life. I mean, this is what I live and breathe and do. I mean, I'm going to keep interviewing World War II veterans of the Allied countries as long as they're out there. I mean, I'm not going to go to college. I'm not, looking for a girlfriend or anything. My job is just to help preserve these stories.
Oh, bless your heart.
Wow. I mean, it's them. I mean, bless them. They're the, like I say, I mean, the way I feel about it is my feeling towards these veterans is the equivalent feeling a person would have if they were tied to a railroad track and there was a train barreling down coming towards them, and someone came and cut them loose and pushed them right in front of, from the train's path. That person who saved the person who had been tied down, I mean, that's the feeling I have of the veterans and what they've done for me. And not just for me, but really for millions and millions and millions of people. And whether or not we acknowledge it, it doesn't change the fact that they did it. And so, I mean, I'm just going to keep doing this because I know that I'm preserving true history and not a secondhand account. Because, when the concentration camps were first discovered, Eisenhower, the commanding general, put a decree to all the photographers, all the war photographers, and all the other press units to use as much film as possible documenting all of the camps, because there would be a time when people would try to deny it.
Oh,
that's
interesting.
True.
Wow.
People have tried to deny it, but they can't because of the proof. And that's what we have to do with these veterans, because I don't want to live in a world where the Germans and the Japanese were the good guys, because they were.
Thank you.
I mean, they literally, I mean, if you look at what they did to the Japanese at the rape of Nanking, I mean, murdering and raping, literally hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, the Germans, the atrocities they committed. And I mean, as much as the United States is a country that has some serious flaws and issues that needs to be addressed, it is also a country that we as a nation should be so proud of. Because what we stand for, the ideals that we are brought up with, that's unique to the rest of the world, except, really the Western world is really what I'm talking about. We are brought up, being an American, you're brought up with a sense of unbridled enthusiasm and optimism for the future. You know,
Mm-hmm.
being an American has nothing to do with the religion or a person's background or their economic status or their skin color. It has everything to do with their mindset
Right. Yeah.
of being that positive individual. And that's a direct uh, a tribute that we've gotten from these veterans and the way they've thought about things. I mean, these men lived through the Depression, worst war in history of humanity,
Yeah.
and yet they're the fortunate ones, is what they'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It was more of an innocent time in that regard. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, they didn't lock their doors.
Right. I know. I know. They drank out of hoses, you know, a garden hose, and things like that. So okay, in like a couple sentences, what do you think that the veterans are thinking of our state of the world or of our country now? Are they proud of their country? Are they, you know,
You're talking about with all the protests?
yeah, the protests and all this stuff. What are their take on that?
I mean, I don't get into politics when I talk to the veterans, but it's obvious from the way they're talking about the current events of the United States that they're very disappointed in the path this country has gone
Mm-hmm.
with the turmoil and the
Mm-hmm.
hatred towards one another. That's unnecessary. It's one thing to disagree with a person, but for people to openly say they hate one another just because of their political beliefs, I mean, that's ridiculous. And the veterans, you know, they call out BS when they see BS. And it's one thing to say that there is racial problems in the country, which there are. It's another thing to address them in a peaceful way that gets everyone's respect, and another thing completely to protest and loot and use a tragedy as an excuse to do harm, and or not do harm, but to do to do criminal activities, I guess is what you can say. You know, a lot of these protesters are not. I don't think these protesters, when they're protesting, I can't say it for all of them. I do not believe that a lot of these protesters, when they're protesting, really have in the conviction of their hearts the tragedy that they're all supposedly there for. I think a lot of them are just using it as an excuse to loot and burn buildings and to go out and do things that young kids would like to do without being held accountable. And that's not the way to address the problems of this country. We need to shine a light on the things that have happened. And the veterans, I mean, there were plenty of horrible things that happened during World War II. And when the veterans came home, you don't hear about these protests and these riots because that's not how they dealt with things. They used their words, they used legislation, they used elected officials, they used the proper channels of our government to create real change, a change that eventually supported by people on both aisles. Right now, all these protests, as noble as the intention could be, it's creating a serious division between people. I see it because I grew up in California. I grew up in Southern California. I'm a son of immigrant parents. I mean, I grew up liberal. I deal with the veterans of World War II and the veteran community, which skews conservative. So I've been to 45 states. I've been to rural places and cities. I see what this country is and all the people from different backgrounds. And I know that these protests are not helping the cause. It's just like when Colin Kaepernick, when he was taking a knee during the national anthem, you know, he was doing it, you know, to support the fact that Black Lives Matter, which they do, but and to put a spotlight on the inequality that Black Americans face in this country. But he was using a platform that was not his. He was using the NFL's platform, which is comprised of more people than Colin Kaepernick, and he was taking over the voice of all the rest of the players and using it as a spotlight for what he believed in and what he wanted to do. And the issue of what he was doing, is, in my opinion, and what the veterans and I have talked about, is that when he was taking a knee, no one talks about the issue he's referring to. All they're talking about is how he's disrespecting the flag and disrespecting the sacrifices made by the troops overseas and the veterans who fought overseas before them. No one sees a picture of Colin Kaepernick and says, that's great. You know, that really makes me think about the inequality that Black Americans are facing.
Right.
When they
Right.
see him kneeling, they talk about, why is he disrespecting our flag? Why is he disrespecting our country? So there
Right.
needs to be some other way that people can highlight these
Mm-hmm.
inequalities without stabbing ourselves in the back. Because, I mean, we can also be a great country and have a country that has flaws. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
both.
And the veterans, they had more honor and more respect. And that is something that I just hold dear. I mean, I remember my grandparents and some veterans that I've talked to, and they just have a softness and a respect and a solidness inside of them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And they don't have to resort to violence and slash.
Anarchy.
It's ridiculous.
I interviewed a veteran yesterday, and his son was telling me that at the VA, the nurse told him that the World War II veterans are the easiest people to deal with.
Wow.
She deals with Iraq veterans, Vietnam, Korea. She says the World War II veterans are the most pleasant, the most humble, the most friendly, and they never complain.
I love that. Oh, that's so beautiful. Gosh. Well, Rishi, thank you so much for this interview. It has just been a pleasure. Well, Rishi, I want to thank you again for this wonderful interview and talk show interview. This is fantastic. I love it. And I want to urge our audience to go to your website at heroesofthesecondworldwar.org. Take a look around. Find out how you can help, how you can donate, how you can get involved, and befriend a World War II veteran. It's fantastic. And also go to the Facebook page, and it's facebook.com/2warhero.
Thank you. I mean, everyone, if you know any World War II veterans, please do reach out so that we can get their stories preserved.
I will. Well, thank you again for this amazing interview. It means a lot to me. And I want everybody to go out there and hug the veteran that you know, or just find a new veteran that you can befriend and let them know how much you care and how much you are thankful for what they've done.
That's perfect. Yeah.